Hey everyone, I'm Carl Hardwick. Welcome to this week's episode of the OPEX podcast. This week, I sat down with muscle building expert Ben Pakulski. In this episode, we spoke about his ascent to the Olympia, we spoke about his training methodologies, and how he utilizes mentality and mindset in his training. It was a great episode and it was a great conversation. I hope you guys enjoy. Yeah, guys, thanks. Just wanted to welcome BPAC, Ben Pakulski, to the OPEX Fitness podcast. I'm sure most of us in the fitness industry know who you are, man, but for those that don't, can you kind of give us a little bit of background on you, your story, and how you got into this whole thing?
Sure, man. Like most people at a young age, looked up to a lot of guys with muscle for whatever reason. I thought it was a pretty cool thing and started training at 15, mostly for sport, and enjoyed it. I was a baseball player, had some baseball scholarship opportunities. So wasn't particularly big, 5'10", 155 pounds. Started training and I liked it more than anything else. So pursued it. And I think, obsession is probably a good word to describe it. But you realize, man, like any success in anything in life, right? If you're not, obsess is a word people attach to things that are negative, but if you want to be successful with anything, you have to think about it 24 hours a day, right? It can be literally anything, and whatever it happens to be. And if you're thinking about it 24 hours a day, you're going to make it reality. And that was me with bodybuilding. Is eat, sleep, and train. It gave me more fulfillment than anything else, and I absolutely loved it. And had this organic desire to learn because I knew that genetically I wasn't as blessed as some of the guys I was going against. So I had to learn everything I could. And, I was very blessed to have some amazing mentors, some amazing teachers. Truly blessed that way. Ended up getting my pro card. So I finished university, decided to compete right away because I was out of shape and wanted to get in shape for a job.
Ben, where'd you go to university?
Western Ontario. So London, Ontario.
Okay. Yeah, I know those guys really well. So I lived in Nova Scotia, so I went to St. Mary's University up there. Right. Yeah, so we actually played you guys in football a few times. So yeah. Are you from Toronto or that area?
I'm originally from Toronto. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Western Toronto. So man, long story short, like I competed for the first time in 2005. Loved it. Kind of won every show I ever entered, and then got my pro card relatively quickly. And I believed in myself. I think a lot of people doubted me along the way, and that's a really important message for people to understand. Is like everything in your life starts with the belief, right? Yeah, if you don't believe in yourself, you're never going to accomplish it. I had a great conversation with one of my clients today about that. Just like no matter who you are out there, right, whether the lowest level beginner or the highest level athlete, you have to believe. You set a goal and without a shadow of a doubt you're going to achieve it. And for me, that goal was, stepping on stage to Mr. Olympia, which I did twice. In 2016, I decided that it's time to walk away, and I left with my health because I have this new mission, right? And this new mission is to take all of these lessons I've learned along the way and convey it to the public in a way, or the fitness community in a way that they start to understand that it's not just about the muscle, right? It's the person you become in the process. It's using the training as a means of discipline and developing character and doing it in the most healthy way possible, right? So a lot of people are so myopically focused on the goal. They're looking at the top of the mountain, right? And they can't see anything other than the top of the mountain, and they just disregard how they get there. And it's a massive mistake because, the muscle, as much as we love to look a certain way, is ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to go away like anything. So what really matters is the person you become in the process, because you take that with you forever. And that's really the new message.
Yeah, man, I think it's important to point out that point on, you being obsessed with it, right? So did that obsession start with fitness, Ben, or did it start with sport? And did that lead into fitness, or did those things kind of happen in their very own silos?
And I may have been somewhat obsessed with sports, but not nearly to the extent with as I was with bodybuilding. Like when I started bodybuilding, I knew right away that that's all I wanted to do, right? That's all I thought about. That's all I read about. And I think everyone has the opportunity to find that one thing for them, So it certainly wasn't what I would call a character trait. It wasn't something like I just get obsessed about things throughout my life. I wasn't particularly obsessed with anything as a kid. I wasn't a very, very healthy kid, right? I came from an overweight family of basically alcoholics, and just wasn't my life. Like nobody had really ever been in a gym. Nobody had ever really graduated high school. That was kind of my my path, my family path as a child. So yeah, I mean, that just kind of kicked on once I started to see results. I started to see results, started to get strong, and get that positive feedback. And really, where it shifted for me, man, 1998, I went to the Mr. Olympia contest in New York City. I was 17 years old, and I saw it, and I was like, this is amazing. Like, these guys are just unbelievable. And I was so enamored by it. I dove right in, man. At that point, I was hooked.
Yeah, I want to hit on, and we'll hit on this in a minute, but the mission and the mentors, and
Yeah.
I want to hit on the mission after we kind of wrap up your story and how you got to where you're at. And I know there's probably some interconnection between those and your story and the mission and your mentors. But as far as, what age did you start bodybuilding? And when did you realize, because you mentioned the genetic thing where it's like,
Sure.
Listeners hear that and they look at you and they're like, wait, what? This guy's saying he wasn't genetically blessed. So kind of walk us through when you started that process, and was that an easy process for you to, let's just say, grow muscle, right? Was that an easy process? Was that a tough process?
Tremendously hard. Like I said, I was an overweight kid because I ate like crap. My diet as a child consisted of Pepsi and Coca-Cola and Doritos and such, and it was poor all the time. I mean, I definitely didn't add muscle easily, man. Like, I remember celebrating when I curled the 12.5-pound dumbbells at 17 years old. That's not a joke, man. So it wasn't an easy thing for me to start. But as I saw that progress, I think it was partially the fact that all my friends could do things and I couldn't, and it fucking pissed me off. And I was like, man, I'm working harder than these guys, and they can do it and I can't. And I'm like, why is this? And I'm gonna keep going and going and going. And then I finally realized, if I work hard, I can actually surpass these people. And that was kind of where it started for me. So I really started training at 15. Bodybuilding, I started, I'd say 17, as soon as I went to that Mr. Olympia contest. And that was just a whim, man. I went home, I bought it's funny, I have a story. I looked at my first Flex magazine at 15, and I was like, man, I don't ever want to look like that. I thought it was disgusting. Like most people, right? And it's a desensitization process over time. Eventually, you're like, I just want to put on 20 pounds. And you put on that 20 pounds, and it progresses toward another 20 pounds, another 20 pounds. You kind of never have, it's like money, right? You can never have enough. And so, by the time I was 17, I'd say I was full-fledged into bodybuilding. Most days I trained before school and after school. I started skipping football practice because I was like, man, it's just cutting into my workouts and it's going to cut into my gains. I don't want to be doing all that cardio. And, whether right or wrong, that was my mentality at the time. And really started learning everything I could at that time, man. Even at 17 years old, I was voracious about consuming information.
Yeah. So, you started bodybuilding at 17. You went to Mr. Olympia in 98, you said?
I went 98. It was in New York City, yeah.
What year was it that you were you runner-up Mr. Olympia?
No, I was runner-up at the Arnold, man.
Okay.
So I competed in Olympia 2012 and 2016. Okay. So, yeah, it was 14 years after.
Yeah, so I know this could get extremely extensive, man, but walk me through from, that first curl at 12.5 pounds to competing at Mr. Olympia to where you're at now, and kind of wrap that story up of kind of your fitness journey. And I want to dig into like your mission, but I just want the listeners to kind of understand where you're coming from before we move to, what you're doing now.
Absolutely, man. So at that young age, it was really about performance for sport when I started at 15, and I noticed myself getting faster and stronger, and I loved it and became hooked. And I started at the YMCA, like many kids. I started kind of the local, whatever's kind of close. And I moved to this hardcore training gym in the city. I grew up in Toronto. So it was called Max Gym. And this old dude who was probably in his 60s kind of started mentoring me and teaching me a little bit about lifting, and taught me how to squat, taught me how to deadlift, and really taught me the importance of building a strong foundation. So you'd find me in the gym probably 3 times a week squatting, 3 times a week deadlifting type of thing, like really, really often, and really aggressively pursuing those lifts. So really getting really strong in squatting, really strong in the deadlift before I really ever did anything else, man. Like I remember deadlifting 405 for sets of 12 to 15 before I'd ever bench pressed a plate, right? Before I could bench press 135. Same with squatting, and probably squatted 405 before I ever bench pressed a plate, because I was so voracious about those things and so neurotic. And so pursued that for a few years, started getting bigger, never really thought about competing, went to university at Western, and training kind of went on the back burner, man. Like I still trained 3 to 4 times a week. It was very, very strong at the time. I mean, by 21, I was deadlifting 750 for reps, squatting 700 for a few reps. So I was a strong kid. And, by the time I was done university, I was 280. It wasn't the best 280. So I decided that I got a pharmaceutical sales job and I wanted to get in shape. So I ended up dieting for 4 months. Did my first contest, ended up weighing 237. And won that contest, won another contest 6 weeks later, and now I'm qualified for the provincials, which is kind of the step before nationals. Won that show, went to nationals that year, got second, and by that point, people started paying me to work out, man. So I gave up my job and started pursuing bodybuilding. And once I won but even before I won the Canadian nationals, man, I was very confident in my ability to step on stage and beat anybody. I knew I had a long way to go. I knew I had a lot of muscle that I need to add. But I never doubted my ability to do it because I knew I was willing to do whatever it took. And I truthfully believed, and probably still, I mean, it sounds maybe silly, but I still believe to this day, if I hadn't retired, I would have continued to pursue being Mr. Olympia. And I would have been Mr. Olympia because I wouldn't have stopped. I would have done anything in the world to become Mr. Olympia. And the reason I stopped was because in 2012, I was blessed with a son. And 2013, I was blessed with a daughter. And I just couldn't be selfish anymore, man. I realized there's more things in this world than just pursuing this, selfish goal, like egocentric goal. And it just changed the person I am. So I decided to wrap up my career with doing 5 shows in 2016. Super blessed for the people I've met and the opportunities I've had. I've been able to travel the world, meet hundreds of people, thousands of people. And along the way there, learning a little bit and starting a business, just basically teaching people intelligent muscle building strategies, right? Like I made a lot of mistakes, taken a lot of courses, learned from a lot of people much smarter than me. And the thing that I had that maybe most other educators don't have is I pushed my body and my mind harder than anybody else that I've met, right? And like even in bodybuilding, I would intentionally go out and seek the guys who are working it the hardest and I would train with them. I'd be like, hey man, like if you're the hardest working guy, I want to train with you because I'm going to fucking bury you.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't stop until I did. Right. And that was, maybe one thing that I took as a badge of honor. I just wouldn't stop. And, that allowed me to push my body and my mind further than most people ever will. And that's why I feel like it's made me a great teacher because my standard for most people is much higher than it is for themselves.
Yeah. So who was guiding you along that path, man? So you're at Western. You're fairly strong, training a couple of times a week. Were you coaching yourself? Were you programming for yourself? Did those mentors come into your life early, or was that when you're already at a higher level?
Man, that's a great question. So I had one mentor who was, kind of like a father figure to me when I was very young, and he ended up passing away. And he ended up passing away from what I would say is probably bodybuilding related stuff. His body weight was high, his health wasn't great, didn't sleep really well. I think he had a heart attack. Really impacted me. So I started looking for another mentor in the sport just as I went into university, so 19 years old. And I really couldn't find one, man. So what I was looking for was someone who took a really educated approach to this whole process and, was really good at training, understood the nutrition, understood the supplementation. And I really couldn't find anybody. The closest guy I could find that I thought would be a mentor was Milo Sarchev, and he's still a great friend of mine to this day. And he didn't coach me. He didn't know idea who I was, but I kind of pursued him from the outside or just followed him from the outside and thought he was certainly one of the smartest guys. Charles Poliquin was a guy that I latched on really early. Dorian Yates was a guy who I thought was way beyond his time. And those were kind of my mentors from a distance. And up close, I was very blessed to have this one guy who kind of changed it all for me, man. In 2009, I think I met him. It was 2009. His name was Peter Chasson. Again, another guy unfortunately passed away. But he really changed it all for me, man, and opened my eyes to just this reality that exercise isn't about weight. Exercise is about challenging a muscle, right? It's not about what happens outside the body, it's what happens inside the body. And that kind of sums up in the simplest way what he did for me. And I've had other amazing mentors along the way. Like he led me to these other mentors. And I feel like he was an angel sent to me to really save my life, man, because I probably would end up killing myself, not literally, but hurting my longevity because of how obsessed I was with bodybuilding.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue, man, into where you're at now. right?
Yeah.
So you competed at the highest level in the sport, and from what I see with what you're putting out, you're moving more toward a health and longevity
Sure.
aspect, and that's the message that you're putting out, at least from my view. What are your thoughts there as far as the direction that you're moving from the muscle building guy to this health and longevity guy?
Sure, man. The reality is most people out there are building muscle in spite of themselves. They're doing everything wrong and finding a way to accidentally build muscle. And people are making the excuses they don't have the genetics or they don't have the time or the money or whatever it is. It's all bullshit. You just don't know what you're doing. Or if you're doing something, you're doing it all wrong, right? And that's just the reality. And even bodybuilding, and they're so blind to like, oh, I'm just doing what everybody else used to do in the 80s, 90s, and like if you said that in any other sport, people would laugh at you. But in bodybuilding, it's a badge of honor to train like the guys of old school, right? Like science didn't exist back then, research didn't exist back then, yet everyone still decides to train like they did back there. It makes no sense at all. So, I've just kind of seen all the mistakes I've made along the way and was blessed to leave with my health and my joints and feel great. And now I feel this opportunity in my hands to like pass on this information to young aspiring fitness athletes. And, I really have this mission now to empower young fitness enthusiasts. And that could be anywhere from, 12 years old to 25 years old with the knowledge and skill set to build the body of your dreams, man, because you realize that you can, right? And no matter what the story is that you tell yourself as to why you can't, it's not true, right? Very few people, who knows how my genetics compare against other people, and it doesn't really matter, but very few people that I've met can't build muscle, right? There may be a few people who have certain diseases or ailments or whatever, injuries, that's one thing. But if you have a healthy, functioning body and you can move, like you can build the body of your dreams, right? It may not be Mr. Olympia, but it can be the best version of yourself. I think if you start to empower, kids right around the teenage years, preteen through teens, with the knowledge and skill set to build their greatest body, I think you change the world, man. My belief is, well, you get rid of some insecurity, maybe you get rid of some bullying, maybe you get rid of some eating disorders. Maybe they start to care about the world a little bit more, man. Because like if I care about my inside of my body, I'm going to start to pay attention to the outside of my body, right? Because if I know if I have to drink that water coming from the tap, I may be less likely to throw my trash in the lake, right? I know if I have to eat that food coming from the dirt, I may be less likely to not take care of it or dump something in the road. And I think that's, my belief is this is the catalyst for really shifting the world. So I've seen this opportunity in front of me, someone who has a platform and maybe has an ability to articulate it. And I just feel it's almost my duty now to take it to this population of fitness enthusiasts who love fitness, they love health, and they want to thrive, man. You want to live a great life, a long life in a world that's beautiful. And if we don't screw it up first, like we can do that, in many generations to come.
Yeah. So what is, in that definition of health and longevity, what does that mean to you? Right. Because when I think of health and longevity, I think, and how it relates to fitness, of course, I'm with you on like all of the benefits that, doing fitness and building muscle and building the body that you want, right? How that can, make someone more emotionally stable, healthy, confident, whatever it is. But when we start talking about, physiologically, the physiological aspect, what does health and longevity mean to you?
Sure. I kind of explore that question often, right? And if you look at people who are elderly, the first thing they start to do is they lose their ability to move. Well, I guess maybe first they lose strength, and then that correlates with the inability to move, right? So people say movement is life, and I'd argue I say strength is life, right? Because being able to move is one thing, but being able to move with confidence and be able to move through large ranges of motion is dependent on strength. It's contingent on strength. So this ability to maintain strength and muscle over time, I think is a massive, massive asset to cellular health, to insulin sensitivity, to decreasing inflammation. And for me, like that's health, right? It's not just say I want to live to be 100. It's like, no, I want to thrive, man. I want to be running and jumping and lifting and having sex and all these amazing things that is the opportunity that's given to us in this life. Until the day that I die, and if I can't, why the hell am I here? So there's so many things that need to go into the optimization of the human system, right? And it's not just like, hey, I want to exist or I want to live. Forget that, man. I want to thrive, right? I want to be a high achiever. I want to thrive. I want to be someone who literally can do all of the things that I could when I was 15 until I'm 95 or and beyond, right? So what does that look like? And that looks like a diverse approach to fitness. That looks like challenging my muscles on a consistent basis and making sure my body is challenged. That means challenging my mind. So my mind is always expanding and growing and never contracting. This means using discipline on a day-to-day basis so that I can, allow my mind and my body to integrate and thrive together. That to me is ultimately what longevity looks like over the long term.
Yeah, and how do you get there with a client, man? So, something that we like to do here at OPEX and what we like to teach our coaches is to reverse engineer, right? So if I'm in a consultation with a client and, this client's goal is to, walk up a mountain when they're 90 years old, it's like in my head, I'm taking that goal and I'm reverse engineering that. Like,
Sure.
let's say this guy is 40 years old. Everything that we do in life and fitness and nutrition, that's all aimed to his goal, right? Which is when he's 90 years old, he wants to walk up a mountain. So, we can use that as kind of like a check, right? A check for ourselves inside of the design where it's like, why am I doing A, B, and C? Is that actually leading to this guy's goal of walking up a mountain when they're 90? Because we can get caught in the nuances of program design and, entertaining our clients and so on and so forth. And we're actually not moving them any closer to their goal. So I do want to get into your principles, and there is a question that's coming off of that. I want to get into your principles, but how would you approach that? Like, you have a client that comes in and well, first, let me ask this. Do you still train clients one-to-one?
Man, I don't as much as I used to. I still have a handful of clients that I kind of get with on a semi-consistent basis. I do train some people online, and it's more like a high-level mentorship where I do pay attention to their health, and it's more like problem solving. So it would be a lot of high-level coaches, a lot of high-level entrepreneurs. So I don't necessarily write programs and diets anymore. So I'm not doing the tactics. I'm more doing the theory. So the way I frame what you just said is there's two things that I think everyone ultimately wants in longevity is they want a brilliant mind and resilient body. And the way I define resilience is I want to be able to access every range of motion that my body should be able to access. And I want to be able to resist and generate force there, right? So brilliant mind, resilient body. So resilient body, like I need to be able to get into all those ranges necessary to do all those things that I want to do over the next 50 to 100 years. So if you need to be able to climb a mountain, okay, well, let's reverse engineer that and dissect and go, okay, what are all these positions I need to be in? How do I maintain strength and stability in those positions, right? So strength and stability are obviously correlated extremely highly. Without stability, you don't get strength. So how do we then just like say, okay, here's the things you want to do. Let's make sure your body can do all these things. And for most people, to be honest, I just approach it from a perspective is I want to take every one of the joints in your body through its entire active range of motion under load within a certain time frame. It doesn't have to be a day, it could be every couple of days. But like I want to apply resistance to these places where they're weak, right? So as a bodybuilder, a lot of people are myopically focused on completing this exercise. I got to move this weight from point A to point B, but it doesn't consider, so that's what I call an exercise-centric view. But it doesn't consider a muscle-centric view, right? So exercise from a muscle's perspective. So is this muscle going through its entire lengthened, shortened cycle? And if it's not, some part of that range is probably being neglected and probably isn't being challenged. So thereby what's going to happen is you get these strength gradients. So the middle of the range gets strong, the extremes of the range gets weak, your body can't produce force there. So it gets shorter, it tightens up, and then thereby injuries start to happen, right? Like I can't access that range. So, but yet I try to go there sometimes and my body starts to break, it starts to ache, it starts to become inflamed. So really looking at all the natural ranges of the muscle and challenging it to a person's maximum momentary ability, right? So, and that could change day to day, week to week, and that changes at different parts of the range. Like you're certainly stronger in certain parts and weaker in other parts. And, as a trainer, you have to look at all those things, man. You have to look at like, what is this person capable of right now? Forget about what your standards are for yourself or for another client. What is this person capable of in this exact moment? And how do I apply a progressive challenge to that, right? Micro incremental challenges.
Yeah. So what I heard there is, because everything you say, I'm just seeing like the nuances and the connections between OPEX and what you guys are doing. And it's, what I gathered from that is, we teach our coaches all the time, right? With your clients, they have to understand how to execute a contraction before we can build on top of that, right? So, we're known in this space as, the more functional. the way that we deliver training programs and coach our coaches. We're more in that functional fitness arena. But bodybuilding is our base, right? And contraction. Because when I say bodybuilding, right, I know the market
Sure.
thinks of separate things in our language. It's just like, hey, you're doing really good contractions over a long period of time to build a base to do the next thing. Sometimes that next thing is nothing, right? It's just like I'm just going to continually go through full ranges of motions and build really good contractions over time. Or sometimes when we're working with an athlete, it's like I want to compete at the highest level of whatever this thing is, whether that's a CrossFit Games athlete or whoever that is. It's like
Right.
Bodybuilding is still that base
It has to be the
and really
foundation.
good contractions, right?
Yeah, and even as a CrossFitter, man, if you can't access a range of motion, by definition, it's because of weakness, right? So now the first thing you have to do is become stronger there and improve your body's ability to get there. But so you're looking at improving contractility of the muscle and also the nervous system. So I mean, by definition, everyone should have some objective of being a bodybuilder, right? In variable degrees. Obviously, mine was just extreme.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts, man, on the fitness industry as a whole? Not just bodybuilding and that arena, but sports specific training, functional fitness, mom and pop going to the gym and just lifting weights, kind of Orange Theory, that stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on the industry and where it's going?
Well, I think anything at any moment in time has an opportunity to go in any direction, right? And in the fitness industry right now, I feel like I said, anything can go in any direction. And if we get the right group of people with the right messaging and the right intent, we can shift it in any direction we choose. So that's why I'm so grateful to connect with people like yourself, because if we have a strong message to empower people with the knowledge and the skill set, like I say, and the real integrated part that I think is an important piece, which we haven't touched on, is using fitness, using exercise, using muscle building, whatever your endeavor, if it's running and CrossFit and swimming and bodybuilding, whatever it is, using it as an opportunity to be present, using it as an opportunity to become more mindful, to connect with your body. If we can get that message across, the fitness industry is on a very rapid upswing, right? And if we can't, and if people keep doing this mindless, disconnecting style training, I think the fitness industry will be on a downswing, right? So if people like yourself keep spreading the message of intelligent training and taking a mindful approach to this stuff, the world will shift, right? I really believe it, because there's very few opportunities in life to really become more disciplined, to really connect with your body, to really become present in the moment as much as in training, right? Like, you have to be present, otherwise you can't do things correctly. And I think if we spread that message across the world on a day-to-day basis, the world will shift toward being more mindful, being more present, being more healthy, caring more about themselves, caring more about each other. That's ultimately the chain reaction I see happening. So, I never try to judge, because ultimately it doesn't matter what the current state is. All that matters is I'm doing everything I can every day to move it in the direction that I believe it should go.
Yeah. What kind of impact do you want to have?
And I just have this unconscious feeling or belief, maybe, that I in 2010 started to create a shift toward intelligent muscle building in my niche. I said my goal in 2010 was I want to be the catalyst for intelligent muscle building around the world. And we've touched millions and millions and millions of people with this muscle intelligence way and the intelligent approach to muscle building. And I'm totally humbled by the number of people that reach out and the number of people that I get to meet when I travel the world. And now it's like, okay, maybe I wasn't the catalyst, but my belief is that we are certainly a part of the catalyst to change. And now my belief, or my mission, is to empower every single person in this world with the knowledge and skill set that you can change your body and you can love your body. And that may not happen in my lifetime, right? That may be a multiple lifetime goal, but at very least, I'm going to do everything in my lifetime to empower my generation so that they can then empower their sons and daughters and family with that information, man. So it went from being this goal of I want to touch 1 million people to now being this goal of I want to touch 1 billion people, right? And I want to just, man, if I can just let people know that you can, that belief in yourself, and forget about all those bullshit reasons why you can't, the rules, bullshit rules. you can absolutely change yourself and you can change the world, man. And I think we're in this beautiful place, this beautiful position to be the catalyst for the shift in the entire fitness industry, right? I don't know how old you are, but when I started in the fitness industry, there was very few people taking what I would consider, if any, taking what I would consider an intelligent approach. And that's not a shot, a knock on anybody, right? That was like everyone just did what they were taught or what they thought was correct, right? Everyone read the Arnold Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding and said, hey, this is the way you do it. And right, it's probably true at some level. And
that's how I started, man. I was 12 years old, going to the YMCA, or sorry, yeah, it was the YMCA, and just opening that thing and just rolling. Didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but I was contracting muscle and I was getting bigger, and I was like, fuck, this is working.
Right.
You know?
And now, so the crazy thing is, you're looking at this one guy, maybe two guys in that book, and going, well, this is the way it's supposed to be done. And then you could work as hard as you want. You could work way harder than me and put on no muscle, and I could work mediocrely hard and put on more muscle. And it has nothing to do with my genetic ability to put on muscle being greater than yours. It has to do with maybe the exercises that I chose fit my body more effectively. So we could do the exact same exercise and I could build big pecs and you could get really sore shoulders. So now your unconscious belief comes, well, I can't build muscle in my pecs. I get sore shoulders. That becomes your belief system. Whereas I'm doing it, and because my structure is different than yours, my pecs get huge, and it builds that momentum and that dopamine over time that says, hey, you can do this, right? And that's literally as simple as it comes down to. So if someone at 13 to 15 years old said, hey, here's the playbook for your body, right? Here's the rule book on how to do this for your body. Here's how to look at it for you. Go do it. You do it for a short amount of time, and all of a sudden you're like, bang, holy shit, I can do this a lot better than I thought. I'm actually going to pursue this a little bit more. And the scope to which you pursue it is completely irrelevant, but you're going to feel empowered to go, whether or not I choose to do it right now, I know that I can. And that's a powerful place to come at the world.
Yeah, we see that a lot in sport and just in, you know, people that want to get better and get fitter and grow some muscle and get leaner. It's, you know, people aren't looking at what is the minimum effective dose for me to actually get results long term. They're almost looking at it from the other side, where it's like, how much can I do, instead of how little.
Maximum recoverable volume, right?
which it's like, let's look at it. Yeah, let's look at it from the other side, where it's like, hey, let's actually use minimal, right? And now, how much longer can we spread this thing out or stretch this thing out? Because if we're always looking at what's the maximum amount of work that I can do to see results, it's like, you know, that ascent is a lot shorter, right? Because we can't just add volume over years and years and years. At some point, it's just going to end. We're going to get hurt, die, or we're just not going to, we're going to stop adapting, right? So we see that a lot in the way that, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
There's a deeper level to that, right? So when you explain that to someone, they're like, well, I just want to work hard. And you're like, okay, I get that. There's certainly a place in everything we do to work hard. But looking at it from, you know, objectively, I guess, the harder you train, the more stress you have to subject your body to elicit a change, the more internal inflammation and cortisol and adrenaline that's being generated, right? Now your body has to cope with that before it can ever even think about building muscle. So if you look at the balance between the autonomic nervous system, right? So we have the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So when you're training that hard and you're creating, like I say, this cortisol response and this inflammation response and this adrenaline, all this is being generated in your body, the higher the stress that's being generated, the longer it takes for your body to recover from that. So, you know, people don't think about that. When you're adding the stress of exercise on top of all these other stresses that exist in life, it's literally causing a near impossible scenario for your body to build muscle. So you get people who come in and go, I can't build muscle, I get fat. Well, you're probably just not doing things correctly. So how about we try a minimum effective dose, not maximum effective dose, and combine that with some hopefully stress management strategies outside of the gym. And all of a sudden your progress starts to come really fast. And all of a sudden your body fat's falling off and you're just like, oh, I wonder why this is happening. Like, okay, well, this is what, right? Stress management, managing the autonomic nervous system, measuring things like heart rate variability, seeing what your recoverability is like, and how much training volume should you subject your body to, right? If your HRV is high, hammer it. If your HRV is low, man, you gotta chill out and do less volume, right? Adjust it according to how your body feels, and this beautiful new opportunity we have with our heart rate variability.
What off question? Just because you mentioned that, what are you using to track HRV?
I think the same thing you are, if that's an Aura ring on your finger.
It is,
your wedding ring.
Yeah, it's Aura.
Yes, I'm a huge fan, man. And I like the idea of 24-hour HRV because so when people talk about HRV, sometimes, in the past, it's been suggested that when you wake up in the morning, because you're wearing people say, wake up in the morning, put on your heart rate strap and check your heart rate variability. And you do it for 3 minutes and you can say, hey, well, this is my heart rate variability right now. That's useful, more useful than nothing. But what's even more useful is be able to check it in real time, because I can definitively change my heart rate variability, in almost an instant by learning to manipulate certain variables, right? So breathing, right? If you can learn to manipulate your breathing cycles, inhalation, exhalation cycles in a particular way, you can absolutely improve your body's recoverability instantly, right? So something as simple as that, like anything that's this parasympathetic activation. So it can be anything from breathing, walking, meditating, yoga, all these things are very, very parasympathetic activities, which will then improve your body's heart rate variability and improve your body's ability to recover and ultimately digest and rest.
Yeah. So at OPEX, man. So what the way that we, because you talked about your mission. Our mission here is to empower the coach, right? So empowering the coach in our eyes is it's related to how a coach is delivering fitness.
Sure.
So the only way that we deliver fitness is a one-to-one personalized fitness model where everyone's designed their individual training program based off of various things such as stress, and you're mentioning stress management, and we're talking about muscle building, and it's like but the program's not working. But it's like, okay, let's actually have an opportunity to have a conversation with our client outside of the gym, maybe in this consultation room where we're talking about other variables such as nutrition, life, work, relationships. How much water are you drinking on a daily basis? Are you chewing your food and digesting properly? Little things like that a lot of higher level coaches aren't even taking into consideration because we're so attached to the training program and
I always say when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? When you're a nutritionist, the number one most important thing is nutrition. And like, when you're a strength training coach, the number one most important thing is the program. And the reality is it's none of those are reality, right? Like it's all of the above. Like everything has to play in depending on who you are, where you are in your life, and what is kind of the biggest bottleneck for you, right? I always approach it like, I have my 6 pillars of a lean, healthy, muscular physique, and you go, okay, well, which one is the thing that's holding you back right now? Right. And if it's always going to be one of these things. And so, okay, well, which one is it? Let's address that first. For most people, it's stress and sleep, right? You address their stress and sleep, their body changes immediately. Their performance goes up, their cognitive performance goes up, right? Like instantly. And then after that, only then and then do you address nutrition? Do you address training? Like it doesn't make sense for me to go after someone's training when something else is the thing holding them back.
Yep, definitely. When I know you're not training a bunch of people right now, Ben, but when you were coaching and training people, what would that look like? So let's say, I came into your gym, I'm like, hey man, I'm going to work with you one-to-one. Kind of walk me through your approach. And,
Sure.
I just want to gather some of your beliefs in the way that you approach and the way that you actually coach
in
your
the
client.
gym tactically, or like just overall when you came in, like
just overall, let's call it. Yeah. Let's say not, a PT session specifically, more of like, I want you to coach me. I want you to coach. I have this goal. And what does that look like if I'm hiring you as my coach?
Sure. A lot of times it's just an organic conversation, and I'm looking for speech patterns. I'm going to ask questions about your day-to-day habits, your sleep routines, your sleep rituals, what your nutrition looks like, and what's the story you're telling yourself and you're telling me ultimately, right? And looking deeper into the speech patterns to see like, okay, well, sometimes I can't do this, and I have a hard time with this, and people are often going to tell you all the biggest problems just as soon as they open their mouth, like, and it's all about the words that they're using because it's about their belief systems. So I'm looking at, and I'm often going to start calling people. That's the first thing I do is, if you're working with me in my mentorship, like the first thing we do is we'll spend 9 minutes on the phone. And every time you say something that's a victim word or a victim response phrase, I'm going to call you on it and be like, hey man, did you hear what you said there? I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, we'll fix it. Right. So, and just starting to like create that habit of consciousness around your words to start changing your belief patterns is so important. And then from there, it's objectively looking at, okay, well, how can we objectify stress? Can we look at things like HRV? And if we can, well, we're going to do that. We're going to, every one of my clients is an Oura ring. Can we objectify sleep, right? Again, with the Oura ring, like, are you getting enough sleep? Why not? How do we fix that? Can we objectify, nutrition and digestion, right? Is there an issue there? And usually when you remove stress, everyone's digestion seems to improve. So I know everyone's going down this path of like, oh, it's got to be the microbiome because that's the kind of the root of everything. But the reason most people's digestion is messed up is because they're chronically stressed and they're shoveling food into a stressed digestive tract, and the digestive tract doesn't absorb food when you're stressed, right? You're in this parasympathetic, or sorry, you're in the sympathetic place. Your body is in fight or flight. It's not in rest and digest, and yet you're hammering food into your mouth. It sits in your stomach, often putrefies. On top of that, the quality of our food is very, very poor. Obviously, loaded with glyphosate and things that are going to cause issues with the tight junctions of the gut. So again, all those things are kind of the next step down the line, right? And then, so it's giving you the 6 pillars, man. It's going to be mindset. It's going to be often top of the pillar or top of the totem pole. Then you're looking at stress management and heart rate variability. So the autonomic nervous system. You're looking at sleep. Then we look at nutrition. We look at training. We look at your environment, because the way our body interacts with your environment and things like light and EMF and sound and water, all these things are so important to optimization. And I hate to say that any one is ever at the top versus at the bottom, because it can be completely different for everybody depending on what you're subjecting your body to. But that's really the approach, and it's hard to give you a kind of a cookie cutter approach, but it's always within the 6 pillars. And like I said, the most general thing you're going to find issues with, everyone has mindset stuff. Like everyone's got some things we can improve with their mindset, and I've kind of got my tactics to go after that. And then from there, we're going after stress, because often if you can fix stress, sleep will often help it correct itself. And then after that, we're going after sleep. If sleep still doesn't correct itself, sometimes the environment is the thing affecting your sleep, right? If you're getting too much blue light, you're getting too much EMF, too much pollution, your body's not going to sleep. So whether you address that, and training and nutrition are, the big levers, I guess, that we can pull, that everyone's after. But those other 4 things are the ones that nobody's paying attention to, that are often the very thing holding you back.
Yeah. What's your approach on nutrition? Like, do you have a particular methodology, or is it?
You could kick me in the nuts if I said I had a particular methodology. It would be stupid of me to say yes, right? Like, no, obviously, right? And I think anyone who does is making a mistake. And I think the only intelligent approach is to look at it from a perspective of what does my body need now to fuel optimal high-level performance, and what can my body sustain now, right? So when I say sustain, it's like, okay, depending on the seasons of the year, depending on the amount of light exposure you're getting, can actually massively impact your body's ability to use certain nutrients or its need for certain nutrients. So we have to adjust to that, right? Summer versus winter can be very different nutritionally. If you're in a phase of high amounts of endurance versus high amount of glycolytic versus high amount of anaerobic stuff, like all these different things require different nutritional status. If I'm doing a phase that's very strength oriented, very compared to very hypertrophy oriented, they all need variations in nutrition. The variations may not be massive, right? It may not be huge swings, but it's certainly a variation if we're speaking from a perspective of optimal.
Yeah, just inside of that, and I mean, obviously, I agree wholeheartedly in that individual approach to not only training and coaching someone in lifestyle and behaviors, but even in nutrition. But just going a level deeper, it's just 2 things that you mentioned, just the hypertrophy versus strength. What are some principles that you stand behind nutritionally? Like, let's say all things being equal, if there's a such thing as that, and what's the difference between my hypertrophy phase versus my strength phase nutritionally?
Sure. So hypertrophy typically is going to be something that's a little more volume centric. So we're going to be a little more focused on creating more overall work. We're also going to probably be creating more overall muscle damage. So those 2 things tell me right away, I probably need more protein because I'm creating more muscle damage, and I might need more carbohydrate because I'm doing more volume. So I'm tending to deplete my muscles a little bit more. Whereas strength training program is only really going to be fatiguing in most instances to the nervous system, depending on where you are in the phase, right? It's either going to be nervous system and some muscular system. So we need to support the nervous system. So the ways to support the nervous system are with parasympathetic activities and potentially with increased nutrient intake, right? You can look at maybe it needs some fat to decrease the inflammation, maybe it needs some a little bit of carbohydrate to replenish ATP. But just looking at it from those perspectives. So what system am I stressing, and how do I support that system? So if I'm doing a highly metabolic workout for hypertrophy, meaning I'm doing a dense workout, lots of work in that phase, I'm burning through a lot of glycogen, probably not breaking down a tremendous amount of muscle. So my need for carbohydrate goes up, but my need for protein may not be as high, right? Whereas if a hypertrophy workout is really, really eccentrically loaded, heavy loads. Okay, well, now maybe my need for protein goes up, especially in that window around the workout. And then with the strength stuff, like I say, man, I don't think there's a huge use of carbohydrate in a strength-based workout in most instances, right? You're in this usually under 10 seconds as far as total time at work. So it's relatively energy, not very demanding on the energy system. So on the energy systems, so there's not a huge need to do a post-workout shake. There's not a huge need to kind of replenish things right away. What you want to do is you want to blunt the cortisol and allow your nervous system to start recovering quickly, right? So my suggestion in that scenario is, what can you do to get yourself out of high sympathetic drive immediately into parasympathetic? So sit down and meditate, man. Sit down and breathe, right? Be alone with your thoughts for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Calm down. Sit down and do a methodical, deep exhalation, focused breathing pattern. Go outside and go for a walk, or just go outside and be outside for 5 minutes and allow your nervous system to kind of settle itself down. Because the faster you can get it sympathetic, the faster you can start that recovery cascade, right? And most people after a workout, they're going to go jump on their phone, they're going to go grab a coffee, they're going to go back to work or jump on their email or whatever. And all those things are just driving more sympathetic tone, right? Driving more cortisol, driving more adrenaline, preventing that immediate recoverability. So kind of that's, the very, very high level overview of how we would approach it.
Yeah, it's really well said, man. I think a lot of people make the mistake of not understanding fuel utilization. And when a lot of people think of hypertrophy, they don't actually think of it as, the definition of hypertrophy of cells growing, relative to training. We're obviously talking about muscle, and they think more of, I need to do higher reps to lose body fat. Right. And they think that they should be in a caloric deficit, while they're going through a hypertrophy phase. And then when they're in that strength phase, they're doing more intense work and harder work. So I need to eat more food. But what you're saying is that's actually an inverse relationship.
Sorry, I got to get you to ask that question one more time.
So taking it back, so in hypertrophy, right? So yeah. a lot of people that I've seen, a big mistake that I see is people lowering caloric load during hypertrophy stages, and increasing caloric load during strength phases. And the reason being because hypertrophy in a lot of people's minds equals fat loss, and I want to lose fat, but they're not thinking of building muscle. And just wanted to confirm that what you're saying is actually inverse, right?
Of course. So which one is going to be least calorically demanding, right? If you're doing something that's load-based and not volume-based, right? I'm really focused on how much can I lift. You're really only challenging your nervous system's ability to contract the greatest number of muscle fibers at a time. That's it, right? You're trying to say, hey, nervous system, I need you to contract more of these motor units at one time. That's it, right? And it's probably 1 to 5 times. So how energetically demanding is that, right? Maybe within per contraction, it's energetically demanding, but the total amount of work is so little, the amount of calories burned in that session is slim, right? Like so low. So, the need for calories in a strength-based session are extremely low. So again, there's a lot of then ways to kind of optimize strength sessions. So I'll transition into that. What are the things that we're dependent on or that we're objectively looking for in a strength session, right? Well, we want to have maximum focus. We want to have maximum aggression and drive. So a lot of that happens in the nervous system and the brain, right? So, okay, how do we optimize the brain state? How do we optimize, dopamine? How do we optimize acetylcholine? How do we optimize glutamate? So we can get those drive hormones and ultimately want to, bite someone's head off and run through walls. That's what we're trying to optimize, right? So powerlifting workout or strength workout, doing carbohydrate is going to literally negate that stuff, right? So any amount of carbohydrate before a powerlifting thing, in my belief, is a bad idea. So, you're not dependent on carbohydrates or fuel in most instances there, or at least you're going to have enough glycogen stored to actually fuel maximum performance. So you're looking at how can I turn up my nervous system? How can I turn up my dopamine levels in my brain so I can literally feel that aggression? Dopamine, glutamate, acetylcholine, right? What can I do to support those things? And that's all supported with amino acids, right? So that's, this approach. And then we're looking at hypertrophy. Well, there's kind of two schools of thought here, and depending who it is, you can kind of go in either way. So for a long time, I took the same approach into hypertrophy, meaning I really wanted to optimize my focus and my neurological drive. So that first couple of exercises, I was really, really gritting my teeth and getting after it. But what there's been some research showing lately is that if you actually blunt the cortisol response immediately in the workout, not allowing a massive amount of cortisol, you can actually increase the hypertrophy response. I think that may be contingent on who's doing it, right? If you have chronically high cortisol, it probably makes sense to blunt cortisol in your workouts. if you're chronically maybe lower on cortisol, maybe healthy cortisol rhythms, you could probably allow it to come up in the beginning of a workout and then blunt it midway through. So no matter what, an hypertrophy workout, my goal is building muscle. I'm always trying to, one, put a little bit of glycogen in to extend performance, and two, trying to blunt a little bit of the cortisol response, because it has been shown to, you need some cortisol, obviously, for performance, but it has been shown to, if it gets too high or for too long, to blunt the muscle building response. So just kind of give you a perspective. And then I get looking at how we do that from a brain's perspective. As soon as you put carbohydrates in your system, your brain's going to start releasing serotonin. So what does serotonin feel like? Well, what do you feel like after a big carbohydrate meal, right? You feel really chilled out. You're very calm. You kind of feel good, but you're not really motivated. You're not really aggressive. It's meant to calm you down. So that's not a good idea pre-workout. That may be a brilliant idea post-workout, right? And people hear me saying you should take carbs intra-workout. Well, yeah, again, would it not calm you down? Maybe, but by that point, you're probably already so amplified with all these other neurotransmitter cocktails that it probably won't have that much of a negative effect. If anything, it may actually be useful, because too much dopamine actually drives more adrenaline and cortisol. So,
Ben, where do all these thoughts and principles come from that are inside your head right now, man? Is that academic? Is that
yeah,
experience? Is that mentors? Is that a combination of
all the above, man? All the above. I get very curious. Like I said, I have this insatiable desire to figure shit out, and I sit at home for silly amounts of time and read and learn, research and learn. And I don't think I have a tremendous ability to retain information for the amount that I've learned and read over the years. Man, I think I know I've forgotten 10 times what I remember, but still, maybe that's what makes it so voracious. You know, it's like I know I have to work harder and harder and harder, and I love understanding why we do what we do from both a performance perspective and a psychological perspective. And that's kind of the new journey that I'm on, right? Is understanding human dynamics, understanding human psychology, human performance, and how we can really get the most out of somebody's mind, right? Like I said, I'm working with some high level performers, and I'm like, okay, what can get this block, this cognitive block that you put on yourself, out of the way? Because, man, I work with so many high level athletes, and you look at their talent and you're like, you could be the best in the world, but yet you're barely about to make, you're barely going to make it, right? You're barely going to make the low levels of the pros or whatever. And you're just like, fuck, how can we bottle this, right? How do we create this system or something where we can just create a strategy? And man, we're going to discover it. If it's not me, it's going to be somebody else. There's going to be something in the next few years where we can go, hey man, this is how you get over this. If you're willing to accept the fact that you need to change, and you're willing to accept the fact that you can change and not be a victim, there's absolutely, if there's not already people out there doing it, there absolutely is going to be a way that we can say, hey, this is exactly what it is. My belief is that it lies in discipline. So in the discipline to develop character and confidence, when I implement discipline in my life, man, I'm like, wow, I didn't think I could actually do it, but yet I did. And starting to build that little bit of belief about, wow, maybe I can actually do this. And all of a sudden you set a goal for yourself that's just way too big. You'll think you'll never achieve it, and you blow it out of the water. And all of a sudden, like, oh, I actually believe in myself. Because that's what it was for me, man. It was these little incremental wins, this little discipline that nobody thought I could do it, man. Everyone was, oh, you're never going to do it. And use that as fuel, anything you could find for fuel, to start to develop those little wins, right? That little bit of discipline.
Yeah, man. It's interesting because, we look at all of these various ways of obtaining and hopefully retaining information and knowledge, right? And one thing that I say a lot is, we can have all the knowledge in the world, but if we're not actually putting that knowledge to practice, we're going to lose it. Mm-hmm. Right? So how much did you take from the academic model? How much did you take from just being at home and fucking spending hours on your own researching and reading? How much of that was just coaching yourself and kind of experiencing those things? I guess I'm just trying to get to the bottom of like, what would you say is like the number one, thing or person in which you learn the most from in this fitness game, and kind of where you're at today and all of your beliefs and where you stand?
Sure, man. I'll answer that in kind of two parts. So it was all of the above, right? It was the fact that I was pushing my body well beyond what I thought was possible. Most people thought it was possible. And I could take something that I learned theoretically and apply it in practice and see, right? Like, hey, if I do this for 30 days, what happens? If I do this for 10 days, what happens? And I could objectify it. And I could say, man, I pushed that as hard as it possibly could. nothing happened, right? And I've done it with myself, I've done it with other people, or I could say, hey, I did that and that was amazing. This is what happened, right? So there's a lot of overlap there. I think it's so important for people to realize that this is a big part of my new message, and I don't think we've talked about it all that much yet, is you can't separate the body and mind. So the more you train your body, the more you make the mind more receptive to new growth and taking up information. You're literally increasing the size of the hippocampus, right? So to allow you to retain more information. So that, I think, may have been my greatest blessing, is the fact that while I was training and competing, I was also learning this information at the same time. And I do that now. And that's why everybody talks about the benefit of this morning routine, which I think is something magic. It is and it isn't, right? It's just creating a brain that is more plastic, a brain that is more receptive to information, to change. That's why your morning routine is the most important time of your day. If you don't exercise, meditate, and breathe in the morning, your brain will not function optimally for the day. You don't stand a chance. It's literally an impossibility. No matter how much you try to read, learn, and communicate throughout the day, if you didn't do exercise in the morning, your brain literally cannot do what you expect it to do. So that was maybe a blessing for me, is this integration of how much I really needed to train, which is often 3 times a day during my career, with the overlapping of acquiring information from all these mentors that you asked me to mention. So biggest influences on my life, man. I've got a great friend, Eric Seifert, who now works out of Toronto. You guys should get him on the show, man. He's way smarter than I'll ever be. Super, super bright guy when it comes to exercise. I'll connect you. Tom Purvis. If you don't know who Tom Purvis is, any listeners, just go find him. RTS123.com. Tom is by far the best biomechanist on the planet. Gosh, who else have I learned from? And those are the 2 guys that come to mind when it comes to like exercise. And then, moving along from there, so many people within, little have had a big impact on my life in many little areas, so nobody that's going to come to mind, I'm going to jump out and throw it at you, but there's a lot. There's a lot, reading a lot of books, even my podcast, being able to interview some of the brightest researchers and scientists and doctors in the world, athletes, just putting these pieces together of this, this puzzle of human optimization. My podcast has been a blessing for sure, as I'm sure yours is.
Yeah, man. So, moving from, the muscle expert to the muscle intelligence, kind of walk me through that, man. Like because I know that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about
sure.
What's happening right now with you, man. So where did that come from?
So to be honest, I started Muscle Expert in 2013 when I was still kind of in the deep water of competing. And the only thing I cared about at the time was putting muscle on, right? All I wanted to talk about was muscle. And nothing changed when I changed from Muscle Expert to Muscle Intelligence, right? Like literally nothing changed. All that changed was the name. But my belief, and I could be completely wrong with this, but my belief was that Muscle Expert is very, very, very much likely to pigeonhole me, right? When people hear the term muscle expert, they think it's just conversation about muscle building, and nothing wrong with that. But if you've ever listened to my Muscle Expert podcast prior to me changing it, it wasn't always just about muscle building, right? It was about this human optimization. It was about cognitive optimization. It was about health optimization. And you're like, okay, well, I can't call it Muscle Expert anymore because, I think I'm preventing people from coming and finding the podcast because they hear this name. They're like, what? I had some guests like who I wanted to have on. They're like, well, I don't really think I fit this podcast. And I was like, listen, the name isn't really indicative of what it's about. So shifting over to Muscle Intelligence, even though it's kind of the same thing, I felt, and I could be wrong, my listeners can tell me, I felt that it just opened it up a little bit more to everything to do with kind of optimization, right? So like, yes, it's still going to be muscle focused because I still want to be known as the best guy in the world for helping people build muscle. At the same time, the reason I want to be known for being the best guy in the world for helping people build muscle is because I'm also teaching them about everything else that goes into, life optimization, body optimization, brain optimization. So you can just thrive as a whole unit, right? People try to separate the subparts like, hey man, just work on your brain, or hey man, just work on your muscles, or just work on your whatever. You can't. It's a whole system, right? And that if we can get that message across to people, to stop myopically focusing on that one thing, they'll get results much faster.
Yeah, man, you have a lot of good stuff to say. And, I think the reason why we wanted to get you on is just because a lot of our beliefs, there's a lot of synergies in our beliefs. What we what we use to kind of, spread the gospel is OPEX CCP. So we have an education engine. What are you using? What's your medium to spread this word, man?
To be honest, right now it's just a podcast, man. So I really have no desire to create a platform for trainers, man. I don't know that I want to train trainers. Like, I think it's probably the best mechanism or the best path for me to spread the message. But it's just not something I want to do, man. Like, I don't like the idea of sitting down and writing a course and going and teaching a course. I want to teach things at a higher level to a larger number of people, right? So, which is why I'm kind of getting into this, maybe watering down or not watering down, but diluting the message to a perspective of like appealing to more people. So it's not just like, hey, just do this. It's like, hey, man, here's all the things. And one of these things is going to be the thing that you're in need of, right? So ultimately it's clarifying the message to these people. So my kind of path to passing on this information is going to be books. So I have a couple books in the works. One huge one that's probably going to be a 12 to 18 month project, if not longer. It's probably 2 to 3 years away, but that to me will be the game changer in the fitness industry. I've already got it all mapped out, man. I've got the syllabus all written out. I know it's going to take more than just me to do it. But my vision is to get all the best people in the world to collaborate on it, because, man, I have no selfish desire to be known as the guy on a pedestal who, saved the fitness industry. I just want to help people, man. Like, I don't give a shit if my name is remembered or like, man, as long as at some point people wake up, and wake up to life and the opportunities that exist in front of them. And it happens hopefully sometime in my lifetime. I'm so happy about that. And people can remember me or not, man. At the end of the day, we're all going into the ground, and I just want to make a shift while I'm here.
Yeah, man. Our founder, James Fitzgerald, I think he'll be on your podcast here soon. Yeah. So extremely interested to hear that conversation. But yeah, he's definitely been that guy to a lot of coaches, and obviously myself. I was actually introduced to James through Paul Quinn. So, I was, I guess like all of us or a lot of us in the S&C world, a huge Paul Quinn proponent, and, 08, 09 going through PICP and, spending a lot of time at the Paul Quinn Institute and all that stuff, man. So I think you and James will have a great conversation, and there'll be a lot of connections that you guys will be able to make. And, when you say that book, James comes in my head right away, because he's a high level thinker. And I think you'll appreciate that and understand that when you have him on your show. So looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, I can't wait. And if there's somebody for me to learn from, as you could probably tell from my attitude and the way I approach life, like, I don't claim to know everything, man. Far from it, right? And I think that's when you really start to open up to what life has to offer you. Is, anyone who's just bored in life, man, I just can't understand it. Like, I'm so voracious about wanting to learn and understand, and the more you learn, the less you know, right? So that, the more I learn, the more I'm like, fuck, I gotta learn this and this and this and this. And when I come across some people like yourself and James, I'm like, okay, these guys have something to teach me. So I sit there with my mouth closed and my ears open, and just like, okay, how can we help each other, right? There may be a piece of the puzzle that maybe I can offer perspective on, and then there's certainly pieces of the puzzle you guys can offer perspective on. And anyone who thinks they know everything, I just don't even listen anymore, man. It doesn't offend me. I don't get angry. I just say, okay, man, when you're ready to come and have a real conversation, and it may never happen, right? But if it does, I'm here to help, and because I'm sure you guys get trolled just like everybody else, right? Like, and it's the internet. There's the time of people wanting to troll you for no reason at all. And you're like, okay, hey, man, whatever I could do to help, like, whenever you're ready, let me know. And you find that eventually your greatest adversary becomes your greatest advocate, because they realize it's just coming from a place, an altruistic place.
Yeah, man. I don't know if this is something I made up, but it's something that I always think in my head, right? When thinking about, what you just said and not knowing everything. And when I come across, professionals or quote unquote experts or gurus that do think they know everything, this quote comes into my head where it's, if your ego outweighs your curiosity, you're just not a high level learner or someone that I want to be around, essentially. Right. And I know that, what the fuck's a high level learner? I don't know, but it's something that came to my head, right? Where it's like, some of the most high level people in the world are high level learners, that their ego does not outweigh their curiosity. So I think that's really important, man. So It's good to hear you say that.
I mean, I had that issue with some people in the past. Is your ego, you give them a skill set, you empower them with a skill set, and their ego outgrows their skill set.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah. So time to move on, right?
Yeah. What are you doing now, man? So you're in Tampa, correct?
Right now, so I split my time between Tampa and Toronto.
Okay.
We've got a 10,000 square foot gym here in Tampa where I've got a number of coaches working for me. We're just absolutely amazing, world-class guys who've been working with me for years now. Obviously, we're on the podcast. I've launched muscle-intelligence.com, which is really an information-based site. I want to try to give as much information as I can around, body part training, so muscle building, like how to optimize everything to do for your body, and then everything around my 6 pillars. And not all the pillars have been launched yet. I'm kind of like right in the beginning of launching it, so I'm just dripping it one at a time. So that's where I host the podcast. I host these free ebooks that I put out and a bunch of workout programs that I've created over the last 10 years. So just helping people train in an effective and intelligent way. Write my book, man. Write my books, like one at a time. But there's I think that's probably going to be the path for the next 20 years is, writing a book a year or a book every couple of years. And I love the process of voraciously studying something and becoming, or at least having the ability to offer perspective on it. And then, applying it to the people who fit into this niche that I'm trying to talk to and send it off to them. So it's fun, man. I'm enjoying life. I've got kids and family, so a lot of time there. Keep myself busy.
2 kids?
3.
What are their ages?
12, 7, and 6.
Okay, cool, man.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we have 2. They're 3 and 8. So
Okay.
yeah, big split, man. But it's fun.
Man, life's greatest joy, man. I'm telling you, like life's greatest stress and also life's greatest joy, right? So,
yeah, definitely.
And I wouldn't change it for the world. They're certainly my greatest blessing.
For sure, man. Well, next time I'm in Tampa, definitely want to stop by your spot and kind of. Before we jump out, man, what's if I walked into your gym, what's that experience like? Like, what do you guys do in that 10,000 square foot facility?
So for a long time while I was competing, it was a private facility where you couldn't come in because I was training and I had 6 coaches who would train other clients and athletes while I was not training. But since I've retired, I've opened it up to the public. We've got a very small number of high-level exclusive memberships. And then we've got 5 coaches working for us now who it's kind of a transformation-focused gym, right? You come in, you do a 12-week transformation. We kind of try to handle out everything, all the moving parts. So your training and nutrition, sometimes even helping with your meal prep. We coordinate with a local meal prep company. That's really it, man. And the way I frame it with every single person that walks through the door is, the only question I ask is, how can I help? And people sense that, and I have a legitimate or a sincere desire to help. So, I've got my finger on the pulse of every single person in this gym because, if I can create a space where people are actually getting results, that's a really fun place to come into every day. And when they're not, it's not, right? So I wouldn't want to be in a gym where people are unhappy with their results or unhappy with their training or unhappy with their progress or whatever. So I'm just like, hey, how can I help? And if there's something they need help with and they can articulate it, great. If not, I'll usually be able to pinpoint it anyways by body language or training or something that passes in conversation. And I'll just be like, hey, from an altruistic place, here's the help.
Love it, man. Again, dude, thanks for having you on. It was definitely a pleasure, man. One of the most humble dudes I've met, especially, where you've been and kind of your clout in the industry. What did I coin that? A high level learner. Yeah, definitely a high level learner, man.
High level student, man. A high level student.
Yeah. So look forward to connecting in the future, and look forward to hearing James on the podcast. Anything you want to leave the listeners with, where to find you, products you have out, or anything like that?
Sure.
Man?
Yeah. I mean, muscle-intelligence.com is a great place to find everything. Like I said, it's just kind of getting rolling, but it's got the gist of everything there right now. You can find the podcast there. You can find some programs there. I've just launched the keto program, Keto Muscle Building with Danny Vega, who's certainly the most jacked keto coach I've ever met. Got some just great muscle building programs there. And again, podcast is a great place to find me. Twitter, Instagram, I'm there on all those places.
Cool. Thanks, brother. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it.